Hello, this is Ryan Mitchell. I teach fourth grade at Hums. I am going to talk to you guys about Google Slides and how you can use them in your classroom, both for your students as well as from the teacher's perspective as well. Before I start, I just want to encourage you guys, if you're not using the Google tools and you're still stuck on using Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, things like that, I'd encourage you to shift over to the Google tools, not only because the same functions are there, but I think they're easier to use, and it's nice because if you start something at home during the evening, you can pick up right from where you left off at school the next day if you're logged into your Google account. So you don't have to have the same computer at home or school. You don't have to have a flash drive transporting the document back and forth. It's just there for you on the internet, ready to use no matter where you're at. Also, it's easy to collaborate with other people. So if you're working on something with another teacher, you can just share a document and you can both collaborate or work on it at the same time. Same thing with students. They can use the Google tools to do things together. All right, so I'm going to show you a few examples, and then I'm going to kind of walk you through how you can use it in a different way maybe than what you normally think of as a presentation tool. So in order to open up a Google document, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is, so I'm just going to say from your drive, if you click on the new button at the top, you can do a Google Doc, Google Sheet, or Google Slides. So if we open up a Google Slide, it will create a fresh slide deck for us here, a new presentation with the standard formatting and everything like that. So we're going to come back to this here in a second, but I just want to show you some examples first. So one way that I use it with my students is I open up a slide presentation and give everybody access to it by clicking the share button and then just sharing it with my Google Classroom, or you could have a list of students. You share it with them and each person gets a slide, and what they do is you give them, in this case it was an idiom, and what they have to do is they have to define the idiom, use it in context. In this case we found a picture that was the literal definition of the idiom, and it's kind of a nice way for them to show that they understand the concept. And also the students then can use it as a review tool. So now that they all have access, yes, they worked on one slide, but they're actually able to go through and look at everybody else's and have it there when we go to study for a test or some sort of other activity. Another one I used, the same kind of concept, was with homophones. Again, so they had a set of homophones. They had to define it by using it appropriately in a sentence. And they had to kind of think of which spelling is which definition. Again, it's not only a way for them to practice using a couple of the homophones, but then it becomes a nice study tool. So they can go home, get back into Google Classroom, open up this slide presentation that everybody, again, is able to use, and then they can use it to study before a test. Another one that I actually got from the Google Teacher Tribe podcast is what they suggested was that if you're doing something where you want people to or your students to understand people's perspectives, what you do is you just find a picture of that person and you say, what would this person think, or what would they say about whatever is going on? So in this case, it was, what would these people say about slavery, or what would they have said back during the time of the Civil War? And so they had to think of, okay, each person has a different background, a different experience. What are these people? What's their perspective? What is their stance on slavery? In the case of, even the other side of it, not just the northern states or the people that were helping on the Underground Railroad, but what would a plantation owner or a Confederate soldier say about slavery? Obviously, they have a different perspective than Abraham Lincoln would have. Another way that I used it was when we did the Google Expeditions augmented reality activity last month. I wanted to create a schedule for my staff, so I used Google Slides to actually create this schedule. And it looks small, but this is actually zoomed out quite a bit. If I zoom into full size, you can see it's actually a pretty big slide that I ended up using. The font here for the top is 60. As we come down here, it's 90. So you can see it's actually a pretty big document. And when I show you how you can change the size of it, I'll show you how big this one actually is. But you can see I was able to kind of mess around with the size of the numbers, the layout I was able to take. And if I wanted to move this around a little bit, I can move it around. And I was able to manipulate that quite a bit to make it look how I want it to. But if you're a teacher that has students looking at infographics, this could be an easy way for them to actually create their own infographics. So if I, again, show you the size of this slide, the standard is different than what I use. So if you go down File, Page Setup, you can see my slide ended up actually being 11 inches by 20 inches, which is why, you know, something at a font size of 90, again, if I'm zoomed out, 90 actually looks pretty small when you look at the whole thing, but it's actually, if we printed it out, it'd be a 20-inch piece of paper. So the standard, going back to our original presentation that we created, the standard size of the slides, if you go to File, Page Setup, is just this widescreen 16:9 ratio. But it's really not that big. It's about half a sheet of paper, maybe a little bit less than that. But you can change it. So if you click on File, Page Setup, and you click on widescreen, you can do standard 4:3 ratio, 16:10. But what I use down here is custom. Again, so what I had was 11 by 20. So if I put those in there, you can see it changes it to that long up and down portrait paper size. And you can use it for whatever, or you can change the size to whatever fits your needs. So what I like to do is I use Google Slides actually sometimes to create tests instead of using Google Docs or Microsoft Word. If you do 8.5 by 11, so the standard size piece of paper, you can actually use this almost as like a blank template, and you can move things around on here a lot easier than you can in Google Docs. So if you've ever been in Microsoft Word or Google Doc and you've inserted pictures, for example, and when you insert a picture, your words get all moved around and scattered, or if you put in more than one picture, you know, sometimes they overlap and it's kind of confusing and pretty frustrating for me. Google Slides is nice because you can actually just kind of create your own text boxes wherever you want. So if I wanted to say math test and have a place for their name, I could do that. And then let's say I wanted to insert a shape down here. So let's say we're doing area of rectangles. I could have a rectangle here, and I could say, okay, I want to know what is the area and what is the perimeter. And if you, whoops, not parentheses, there we go. And if you've ever done anything like this in a Google Doc or in Microsoft Word, I think you would agree that this is a lot harder to do as fast as I did here in that versus Google Slides. So let's say, oh, well, I need some units here. So let's say this is, oh, let's say 12 feet. And let's say that this is 4 feet. So there you can see right away, this is a whole lot easier than using Google Docs. So if I zoom in there, now you can see that I quickly created that just by using the Google Slide, changing it again, File, Page Setup, and then you can change it to whatever size you need. All right, so these are just, again, a few examples as I'm making this very confusing for you. There we go. So these are just a few examples of how I use it in my classroom. If you ever have any questions about Google Slides or any of the Google tools, please feel free to email me. It's mitchellr@mishawaka.k12.in.us. And I hope this was helpful for some of you out there. Thank you.